Hey there, this is Emily.
Hey, this is Candace. How are you doing?
Doing well. I've bumped you to co-host, so you should have capabilities to share. I have changed the settings on our end to allow chat, but for some reason the chat is still not showing. So
Okay.
right now we don't have the chat feature.
Okay. Let's see if I can share my screen. Microphone's on, start broadcast. We good to go? I think you should be able to, everything on your screen, including notifications, will be recorded. Should be able to, got it. And so let's see here. Can you see that blue screen?
I can, exploiting student success with self-regulation. Yep.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, so I'll give it a couple more minutes, and then I'll let everyone in from the waiting room, and then I'll just do a quick intro, and it's all you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. I appreciate you joining us on our, I think this is our third First Fridays webinar. So thank you for taking your time on a Friday afternoon lunch break to join. We've got Candace Freeman from Fayetteville Technical Community College joining us today to talk about exploiting student success with self-regulation. Candace, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to share. I proposed talking about this topic because I started teaching my medical lab technology curriculum in the HighFlex model. And the first semester, I noticed that I had a lot of students struggling with the asynchronous part. And it came to me that they did not know how to properly self-direct their learning, self-regulate, organize, et cetera, et cetera. So I started diving into research and doing a lot of work with self-regulation. So I wanted to talk about why I start day one of every course with a lesson in self-regulated learning theory. And I feel like this can benefit students and teachers, no matter the modality of course no matter the way you take a course. So I like to call it begin with reflection. And I like to use the word exploit because we often hear exploit in a bad term, in a bad way connotation. But in this case, it's good because we all want our students successful, and to be as successful as they can be, they really need to be able to regulate their learning. So today I want to talk about how you can teach the theory of self-regulated learning and help your students set goals, monitor their performance, and refine those gaps in learning and iterate. It's all about mistakes and understanding that it's a growth mindset. Also, we'll talk about how we can apply that actual self-regulation process within the confines of a semester-long course with the undercurrent of being able to understand continuous quality improvement in that cycle. And almost all of us, I'm sure, have used the Plan, Do, Check, Act or Plan, Do, Study, Act model of quality improvement. I've been in healthcare. My first life was in healthcare for 30 years. That's pretty much all we did was quality improvement. So it just makes sense to apply that to everything we do in class. So as I'm writing this and thinking about it, I reflected back on my first experience in higher ed. And I was at North Carolina State in one of those massive auditoriums, country girl from a farm, a small community. My graduating class was 400. And I go into this auditorium with 400 seats in it, or probably more. And all I can remember is sitting at the top of the 2 or 3 story room, and the professor saying, look to your right, look to your left. One of you will be left. And I was one of the ones that didn't make it. I had no clue how to self-regulate. I was never taught how to self-direct my learning. I never had to study. I made great grades, got a full scholarship to state. No one ever took the time to really help me understand how to reflect on mistakes I've made and learning gaps and push myself to grow more, even through that struggle. So I was one of the 3, and but made it through. Life teaches you lessons and you learn, but you don't want your students to come in and hear something like that. I would never say that to any of my students, and I'm sure you would never say it either. We want them to be successful. So the mindset that we have now is much different than the professor I had in organic. Yesterday, I dug into some of the data in our dashboards online, the system's dashboards. And what I found in 2016, and that's the most recent data that we have on that current dashboard, 45% of students enrolling in a curriculum program do not persist to graduation. That number is high, and we know that we have high numbers of attrition. So that really got me to thinking about the pandemic and how remote learning has really played into that number. 34% of our first year students fail to progress to the next semester. So although that number is not as high as the one for completion, that's still a huge issue. And me being a first generation college student in my family, first generation graduate, I can understand the struggles that first generation students have in college, and I'm sure many of you can as well. You have no model, you have no one to look to, you don't know the language, you don't know how the system operates. And so it's almost as if, how are first generation college students set up for success? I believe it's our job to do that. And when I say our job, I don't mean a system, I mean the person on the front line in the classroom. And when we look at self-regulated learning, and as instructors and educators, if we teach students how they learn and think, it really helps them, gives them a chance. So looking more at the data, and if you've never jumped into that dashboard, Tableau can be a little bit confusing when you first look at it, and that's the platform that the system uses to publish the data. It took me a few minutes to get through the graphs, but it's logical. So I looked into English 111 for the 2020-21 academic year. 47% of the students enrolled in English 111 in that academic year were online. So that tells me that almost half of the students enrolled in our courses are choosing that online option. And for the most part, most of these English classes are asynchronous. So they are literally teaching themselves with the content that is put on our learning management systems. When we look at pre-COVID, so I looked back to 2018, 2019, 41% of the students enrolled in English 111 were online exclusively. So the pandemic really did a number of things in our society, but for education, I don't even think we realize how transformational it is on the work that we do and the way students learn. I don't believe, as a researcher, I don't believe we have even chipped away at any part of the surface yet to understand the impact. The pandemic really has made people think, hey, I can do this on my own. Hey, I've got multiple choices. And as with anything in life, the more choices you have, sometimes the harder it is to decide what's the best choice for you. Students know that there's access to things that they may not have known there were that they had access to beforehand. So the resources are there. A cell phone is ubiquitous now, pretty much in everyone's back pocket for the most part. And if you can't afford to get one or you don't have the capability, there are programs that can provide you this technology. So I'll be honest with you, most of my PhD, most of my courses, I did them on my phone. And although my professors didn't like that, if I could zoom in on my phone, I was going to give it a shot because I was looking at it from the perspective of a student and a researcher. How can I use this technology to get me what I need? No, it wasn't ideal, but it did give me a perspective of how different technological resources give us more capability of accessing things that otherwise would not have been accessed. So options, students have so many options now. And if they aren't guided based on their own needs and their own capabilities and what their goals are, they're going to get really confused about what to do. And oftentimes, I honestly believe that contributes to the reason that a lot of students decide to withdraw. And if we, as the educators right there with them, don't equip them with those skill sets that they need, they won't know how to manage all of this inundated information. So I truly believe empty chairs are our future. So I teach in HighFlex. I offer my students the option, obviously, to come to campus, to log in live, or to watch the recording later. They get the exact same lecture, not the exact same environment, but it provides an equitable experience so that individuals who want a health science degree, but yet have to work during the day, still can work toward achieving it. With the understanding that 47% of all students enrolled in English 111 in 2021 were online, that tells me we are progressing to watching brick and mortar continue to crumble. And whether you like that or whether you don't like that, personally, I don't want to see that, even though my expertise is in educational technology. That chair at one time was technology. A pencil at one time was new and innovative technology. So this is our future that's coming. More students want the capability to be home or be wherever they are and log into class and learn information. And that gives us a really substantial challenge to be able to reach them and connect with them to ensure that they're successful in our content. I like to say we're going to meet the teacher student. So the teacher student is that student taking your class that they become their own course facilitator. Now that might sound crazy, right? Because yeah, we're the teacher, we're the instructor of record. We're facilitating the experience they're having online, because I could go into Blackboard or Canvas or Moodle and flip the switch and cut something off, right? But they are the ones pacing themselves. They are the ones sitting down at a dedicated time. They are the ones saying, okay, I don't understand this, therefore let me go and dig into something else. And yes, we can put all kinds of FAQs and resources online and branch our courses, but we can't make them do that. We can't make them do that consistently. So I like to think of my asynchronous students as teacher students. And when I talk to them in that manner, when I first talk to them in that manner, they think, oh, you're just lost your mind. But they really are a teacher student because they're teaching themselves using my direction. They can't do that if they don't understand how they learn. And so I've started really looking at the very first day of class. How can I make sure that I set them off on the right foot and set them up for success? Because the truth is, we may not even realize it. We often set our students up for failure if we don't take the time to really learn who they are and what their needs are. And we can't know every student personally. Unless you're fortunate enough to be in a program like I am, where my class sizes are small, I know my students very personally, to the point where I know their family. And that's because I purposefully want to connect with them, because I believe that that helps them be successful. But knowing your learner means that you've got different individuals there who see things from different perspectives, have different backgrounds, have different resources, have different obstacles they have to jump over. So you have to teach to all of that. So on day one, in every class just about, we go over the syllabus, right? That's our contract. That's the contract that the students say, oh, I don't know what's going on. I didn't read the syllabus. No one understands how important your syllabus is. It is vital, right? So on day one, I always give them a big lecture about success. And I talk about, my commitment to them, their commitment to the course and expectations. We review the syllabus together. We learn how to reflect and refine our understanding of information. I explain to them that we are going on day one to learn about a learning theory called self-regulated learning. And I explain all of the pieces to them. I explain to them that you're not tested on this. This is a strategy that's going to help you be successful in any class you take. I set them up for that. I let them know that they need to expect mistakes. They need to expect to fall down. And they need to expect that I'm going to fall down. We all make mistakes. We're human. So if they miss a mark, they can't let that set them back. And I always want to include refinement and repetition, iteration. All of that is part of self-regulation. I was that A student in all the way through 12th grade. I don't recall making anything lower than an A. That tells me my elementary and secondary education was not rigorous enough. And personally for me, so when I got to college, I had no clue how to do this. And when I made a D, I thought that I was done. I thought I was a complete failure. And so I think in that mindset, with my students sitting in front of me or online, someone's feeling that way too. So you can't overemphasize how important it is to understand mistakes are expected and that they're normal. So step one, in my day one, after we get through the, hey, how are you? Who are you? Our ice-breaking activities and the syllabus, I start with helping them understand what continuous quality improvement is. And I actually have a link to this presentation, and I'll be glad to put it in the chat when we finish. Because there are some pieces in here that you might find beneficial, and they may be actually, you may have learned them before, which is perfectly fine. It's always good to hear things again. But I always start with continuous quality improvement. And in healthcare, it can't be overemphasized. You can always be better. You can never be 100% because you can always improve upon what you're doing, and you should continuously do it. So I like to explain to them that quality improvement is kind of like a set of stairs or a ladder that you use to bridge the divide between where you are and where you want to be. And those steps are incremental changes that you have to make in order to reach your goal. And we've all seen the graphics of the stair steps and how rigorous it is. And if you put a huge set of stairs in front of me, by the 20th step, I'm going to be like, okay, I need a break, right? And I'll go again, I need a break. And that's okay. That's what that's about. So quality improvement is just saying, this is what I have. This is what I need it to be. What do I need to do to get to my goal? When I teach my students about quality improvement, I see light bulbs go off. And a lot of them have told me they really never have heard the term before, which really doesn't surprise me. especially if they're young and they, they've never really been in the workforce, worked in an industry or discipline where you use quality improvement and you use metrics to give you a litmus test of where you're at. So it really didn't shock me. But when you see the light bulbs go off, to me, what that's saying is they're starting to understand that you can't run into running. I can't go out and run a marathon. I have to walk first. I have to jog first. I have to build endurance first. You can't get to that main goal without the journey in between. So it's that encouragement piece that they see, and it oftentimes really decreases their stress level. So the plan, do, check, act model, and I'm sure we've all looked at this before. Students have no clue what this is. Some students may, but most of my students, when they walk into my medical technology program, which CQI permeates all 5 semesters. So when they graduate, if they don't know anything, they know this. The plan, do, check, act model is that model, that schema that we use in order to ground ourselves and systematically look at the processes and find out where improvements need to be made. Starting with plan, we want to make a change based on the situation at hand and how we feel like an improvement is going to make it better and get us to the goal that we want. Once we have that plan together, we execute the plan, with the focus being the goal at hand and keeping in mind that we're actually collecting data during that process. After we execute the plan, we want to reflect on the efficacy of that change. Did the plan make a change to get me to my goal? And if it did, great. Let's keep sustaining that and ask ourselves, how can we make it even stronger, even better? The act piece is that refining. So that is the piece where we say, okay, we're here. It worked. It's great. Let's see how we can make it better. Let's improve it a little bit. And that's where we come up with another plan, a tweak to the plan, an addendum to the plan, whatever you want to call it, that enhances what you are doing and keeps the momentum increasing and going. If the plan didn't work, then we step back and we say, why didn't it work? Why didn't it work? A root cause analysis might need to be done. Now, I don't go all into root cause analysis with the students because after you get through 4 chunks like this, they've had enough, okay? But when they see the graphic and they understand that, okay, this is a process, this is me looking back, they're starting to understand how to reflect on their actions. And it's a really big deal for students when you explain to them, there's no such thing as perfection. That A is junk, okay? And when I say A is junk, I don't mean A is junk. I don't mean A is like really bad. I am not an advocate for our current grading model. I've actually started implementing some ungrading strategies in my classes, and that's another webinar. I'd love to share that information too. There's no such thing as perfection. We can always be better. The only thing that is absolute is improvement. You can improve if you want to, if you have the passion for it and the drive for it, but it takes that growth mindset. If you've got a fixed mindset, improvement will not do anything for you. You've got to be able to understand that, yes, I make mistakes, and yes, they're okay. And today is my weakest day if I am committed to growing and meeting my goals. But what that takes is refinement and testing. My dissertation took me 2.5 years. My whole PhD took me 5.5 years. The dissertation took 2.5. I thought it would never end. And after hearing my mentor tell me my stuff was crap several times until it wasn't crap, I actually cried the first time. By the 5th time, I was like, give it to me, doc, I don't care. It helped me understand, yes, this makes sense. And yes, it might be good to somebody, but it's not good enough for what you need right now. So you always have to refine and test, and it's a cyclical process. So when they see that plan, do, check, act model, it helps them understand better. The step 2, after we talk about quality improvement and steps that it takes in order to determine where that improvement needs to be, I pull in self-regulated learning. So in self-regulated learning, it just like PDCA is a cycle, and it oftentimes starts with planning. So we plan and we set goals. This is what we need to do. This is where we need to be. As we execute that plan, we're going to monitor our performance, just like we did in the plan, do, check, act model. We're going to monitor what we're doing and see where the gaps are. And then we're going to reflect and adapt. So self-regulated learning is really PDCA, just in a different model. So the three main steps that I do for my students on day one, after I present quality improvement and the term self-regulation, and I tell them, don't even worry about the term self-regulation. I just need you to know that it is a theory-based, and it's, there's been tons of research on it, and it works. We set goals. We form a strategy. So I ask each of them, and this is personal so that they can share it or not. We talk about setting goals and what they want to accomplish in my course. My courses are the program. And then they execute it. And as we go along in the program, they continuously examine their performance. So on day one, I also talk about the fact that they have to continually assess their mastery of the learning objectives. They continually have to assess their grades. Keep up with your grades. I had one student, and I'm sure everybody has experienced this, I had one student a couple of semesters ago come to me 1 week before the end of the semester. I didn't know what my grade was. You have your grade book right there. I gave you a midterm report. You had everything. So I've implemented different strategies to help me help them better as well. So it's not just giving them information, it's actually me executing things too. And I explained to them that they have to refine their approach. If it's not working for you to watch the videos in the evening after work, then we need to come up with a different plan. And I help them through that as we move along. So self-regulated learning is nothing more than CQI in the education world specific to students. It is a continuous quality improvement model used that helps students self-direct their learning. So it's all rooted in improving outcomes and continuous refinement. So for me, right now, I'm doing a couple of research studies. One is in high flex and the other is in learning obstacles that affect retention and persistence. Do I know everything there is to know about either? Absolutely not. So that's why we're all committed to being lifelong learners, because we understand this concept. Education doesn't end at graduation, right? I did not understand that when I was in college. So when I withdrew from NC State, I enrolled at Wake Tech, the best decision I ever made in my life. And when I graduated, I thought that was it. Oh, I'll get a job. That's great. I can go do my crafts. I can go garden. I can do whatever. I thought that graduation was the end. That is not what commencement is. It's the beginning. And we as lifelong learners understand that we can continuously learn more about the topics that we are acquiring. That's what we have to give to our students, because that we have students who have the same mentality as I had. So like I said, day one, I help them set up and adjust their goals. We design a strategy to meet those goals. So for instance, if they have a struggle with organization, I give them organizational strategies. I'll pull in prioritization, like a risk management kind of model, where you have to ask, what's the biggest bang for your buck over here? What's the most impactful? What takes the longest? And I help them come up from a semi-quantitative perspective on how they can prioritize tasks. And I also talk extensively about the importance of assessment and evaluation. And assessment and evaluation are sisters or cousins or whatever you want to call it. Evaluation is looking back at the data that you obtained from the assessment. So I help them understand when they take my practice quizzes that, yes, if they got a 90 on it, don't move on and say, okay, yeah, I got a 90, I'm ready. Go back and look at what you missed. So for me, in my ungrading model, which really helps promote self-regulation, in my opinion, I give them practice tests out the yin yang. I give them so many practice multiple choice tests, matching, whatever. They don't count at all toward their final grade. And they can take them an unlimited amount of times. And what they tell me is that the more that they do them, the more it reinforces those topics they don't understand. So when they move into my quizzes, and if they understand the difference between assessment and evaluation, it's going to help them develop and refine their strategy more. And I feel like that process really helps them to be able to say, hey, okay, today, you know what, I'm weakest in microbiology today. And I really feel good in hematology. So let's focus on micro and we'll move heme to tomorrow. Whereas I have some students thinking that they've got to do it all in one day. And again, I was never taught how to study. I never was taught how to learn. So I always think that there's someone in my class who has my same background. And I don't want them to struggle like I had to struggle. I want them to be successful, because it's really a shattering feeling when you come from a perceived success in high school or even college, and then you fail. It's really shattering to you. So I don't want them to go through the same thing that I did. So anything we can do to help them really does. So setting goals, I teach them the SMART goal framework. You may be familiar with the ABCD model. I like to use the SMART goal framework. The SMART goal, and we know it, there it is. The SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. We all know how to write SMART goals, but they don't know how to write them. They have no clue. They might think the SMART goal is, oh, that's good. Yeah, that's smart. Yeah. No, that's a mnemonic device. It's an acronym. So helping them understand that when you determine what your goal is going to be, you need to be able to measure it. So for me, I've got one student who I'm helping through this right now, and it's time management. Her issue is time management. She works, she's a mom of two, she's single, she has no time. So, you know, we look at the fact, I want to know how many days of the week and how many minutes you spend in studying outside of class. So I tell them they always have to have a way to measure their goals so that they can assess it. What I also, evaluate it. So what I've also seen is that sometimes my students set goals that are not attainable. I tell them these stair steps can be short. They don't have to be big steps. They need to be small ones, because the smaller ones will get you to where you need to be and you don't have to struggle as much. So SMART goals, I teach them how to do SMART goals. I also teach them a little bit about the ABCD method. The ABCD method more likely is really for us or industry, and I don't know why it's dropped my letters off with the last N, I'm sorry. But it's all about being purposeful and being able to measure what you are trying to achieve. Like I said, writing a SMART, it has dropped off all of them. I'm so sorry. We just talked about that. Writing a SMART goal is specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. Monitor. This is what I tell them. You have got to know what your grades are. You've got to know what the feedback is. So if you're in a class that is numerically graded, keep an eye on that grade book. Make sure you know what's going on. If you have a low grade in something, go into that assignment, that test, that quiz, and find out where the gap is at. That's what you have to do in order to know what you're refining. I always tell my students, do not go back and review the things you've mastered. You're wasting your time. Go review the things you haven't mastered yet so that you can understand it better. So what I have done based upon the feedback that my students gave me that first and second semester is that I require them to do a weekly reflection for me. They've got a chart, they can make their own if they want to, but they have to do a weekly reflection, and they have to submit it through Blackboard, Canvas, or Moodle by Sunday at midnight, whatever. And part of that reflection includes what your current grade is, what you feel confident about this week, what you have no clue about, what you need assistance on, and what is something that I, as the teacher, can do for you in order to help you become more successful. And what I've found is that this is helping them reflect even better during my labs. It's helping them problem solve. It's helping them think more critically. So this requirement is graded for me. It's either you did it or you didn't, but it's forcing them to think about their week And if they miss a week in reflection, they can't go back and do it, because the purpose is to look at this week and what happened, and then to make a change going forward. So part of that reflection actually is, what are you going to do next week? Let's set a different goal. And probably about 80% of my students are consistent with this, and they have told me it's really helped them outside of my own class. The other 20%, they struggle with keeping up with it. So this is where I'm at now, is having to drill down into how can I get that 20% motivated to keep going. If you're familiar with a KWL chart, I spent a little bit of time in K-12 as an internship during my my doctorate, and that was one of the most valuable experiences I ever had in education, because K-12 is completely different than higher ed, and we know that anyway. But the strategies they use in K-12, oh my gosh, it can help our students knock things out of the ballpark. So a KWL chart, I like to give them as an exit ticket in lab, and this helps them reflect on their lab and on their week and the topic of that week. So the K, what they know. What do you know that you know? Like, you know it, you've mastered it. And the W is what they haven't learned yet, what they don't know about. And the W just stands for wonder. It could stand for another term if you wanted it to. And what they need help on, what they're confused about, what they want more practice in. And the L is, what is something that you learned today or this week about the topic that maybe you didn't realize about. You know, you said you know it, but maybe you learned something to add to that information. And they give me this exit ticket when they leave. Either I do it digitally or paper-based. I give them the option. And so it helps me refine the next week. It helps me set goals for them. So when I communicate with them after lab, I'll break down everything that they gave me, all the feedback, and I'll say, okay, guys, here's, or okay, y'all, this is what I got from you. I'm seeing that we need to learn a little bit more about white blood cells, about coagulation cascade, XYZ. And I link them to resources that will help them right then. So I don't just take up the exit ticket just to know what they said and that they reflected. I actually give them feedback on it immediately after the fact. It takes time, but it's worth it. And if you're someone who likes technology and you're all into FAQs, I love FAQs. You could actually build a repository of this information in an FAQ format and put it in your course, and it can evolve over time. It's pretty cool. So refine and adjust. This is the part where if you make the mistake, we have to understand that mistakes are okay, because the only way we learn is through refinement. I really believe the only way I learn is through mistakes. So you have to adjust your approach. You have to adjust and update your strategy based on the performance you did just now or yesterday or last week. If you don't change something, you don't change a behavior, a task performance, you'll never improve upon that learning. So I like self-regulated learning because it really is rooted in continuous quality improvement. And that for me has been an undercurrent of my entire working life. So I really am drawn to it quite easily. And by the time I'm finished with day one and the activities that we do, as far as goal setting, as far as thinking of different strategies, I actually have them create a schedule, an ideal schedule. I give them constraints around it. We have actual activities where I'll say, okay, let's make your ideal schedule. And then I'll say, okay, on Monday, from this time to that time, you need to block it out and readjust it. So I give them problems because they've got to adjust that. It helps them to be able to sit down and say, okay, I didn't hit the mark, but I can hit the mark. And this is how I can hit the mark. I've seen a lot of students really pull themselves out of a really low place because they understand self-regulated learning. And like I said, they don't have to know the terminology. They just have to be able to say, I missed the mark, and that's okay because I'm human. Mistakes are fine. I'm going to learn this and I'm committed to it. And I personally, I run my entire curriculum that way. So here are the main points of what I wanted to share with you today. Day one, again, I apologize for the dropping of the last letter. This is haiku deck if you've ever used it before. It's kind of neat, but I don't know why it's dropping my last letters. Start with day one, and you want to do that all semester. So don't just tell them about how to regulate and direct their own learning on day one. You've got to reinforce it throughout the semester, and you've got to demonstrate it. So I do my best to incorporate quality improvement in everything I do. So I call them spiral backs. Spiral backs. They know what spiral back means. Let's spiral back to this. Let's spiral back to that. Let's reflect on this. So I use the terminology and I speak the language. Require accountability of the user. So when I say require accountability, that's where I'm saying you need to do this reflection for me. It doesn't matter what you write in it. In fact, I want you to be as honest and as transparent as possible. And I have a few students who will do that. And they are the ones that really get the most out of this. I have some students that will write in these reflections graphically and honestly and raw. And that's what I want because it helps them really grow more. But they have to submit them. You have to engage in the process. Goal setting, you have to teach it, not just on day one, but they've got to set it for the whole semester. Students, in my experience, don't understand that our learning objectives for the course and the unit is their study guide. Those goals are our study guide. Everything I do is based on the goals, and it should be. Everything's aligned. So if they understand how to use the goals that I give them, they're going to understand how to make their own, as long as you give them a support system. Reflective writing is really important. Being able to be transparent and to write about your experiences and think back on how it affected you and what changes you would or would not make is critical. So any writing component that I have them do in the course outside of their weekly reflection, I ask them to reflect on it. Okay, you did this lab in white blood cell counting on a hemocytometer. Give me a 5-sentence reflection on it, or give me a 5-word sentence on what you think about it. Some strategy like that. That way it makes them think back about the things that they may or may not understand. And like I said earlier, I use their reflections to structure discussion points so that we can make that feedback real and applicable to their needs, because one person may express it, but multiple people may need it. So that is pretty much it for me and SRL. Does anyone have any questions about self-regulation or any questions about strategies?
And everyone should have the opportunity to unmute themselves if you prefer to speak.
Let me get back on Zoom. Do we have any? Did we have a chat? No, that's right. That's okay. So yeah, if you, like I said, if you have any questions about any kind of strategies that I may have talked about, the KWL chart or anything of that nature, you can feel free to reach out to me. I think most of us probably do much of this. The neat thing about self-regulation and quality improvement is we have so many online resources, instructional technology resources that can help us do this. It's fascinating. Even just a simple Google slide. I have a Google slide that is a repository of reflection it's 6 years old. And I use it every semester and the students build it. So it's an evolving document from multiple, it's crowdsourced essentially, so, or student sourced. But there's a lot of technology that we can use. Slack is great, a lot of resources. If that's it, if you don't have any questions, then that's it for me.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any, but no one wants to talk, but thank you so much, Candace, for your time. And again, thank you everyone for joining. If you have a topic that you would like to share, please get in contact with me. By the way, this is Emily Holliday. And I'll be happy to, get you set up on one of our first Fridays webinars and allow you to present. So thank you all.
Thanks.